Welcome back to all the listeners of the Modern Farming Podcast, brought to you by the Green Gene Foundation, where we are cultivating agricultural excellence through education every day.
We're Chris and Tara, and together we're growing in knowledge about the world that feeds us.
That's right. And today, Tara, we'd like to welcome in Joshua Forsman, a little different topic than usual, but very interesting. He's very into education and educating through games, and a term that he's used is called gamification. So excited to hear about gamification and the educational things that you're doing with games. So welcome, Joshua.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chris. I grew up learning chess from my father. And he taught me until I joined a chess club. And then he says, "You're too good. I don't ever want to play you again." It was kind of neat because I did get to move on to nationals and become a coach eventually. But then that world expanded for me. It went from these ancient games that I think are still so profound and wonderful at times to modern board games. Your Catan, your Ticket to Ride, your Carcassonne. And that stumbled me into Historical Conquest, the greatest game in history. It's a company that I got involved with 10 years ago that loves the idea of understanding the past better and just being able to play with these people, places, and events. And it really brought me to connecting with Tara as I traveled to homeschool conventions and just engage kids and families and adults in such a unique way through this idea of just learning through play, sitting around a table and having fun together.
Are you a representative of the game of Historical Conquest? Is that how you're going to these conferences to show people, to show teachers or homeschool parents how they could use that to educate?
So the company started about 15 years ago with that idea. And then, yes, about 6 years ago, I got involved with the creator and I'm the national rep. And so he sends me around. I get to connect with the families and I get to bring my children with too. And so they have so much fun being able to play other young kids or college kids that are showing up for these tournaments and just be able to play and connect. And my kids meet some of them because we do virtual tournaments on Fridays too. So anybody can jump in and literally play across the United States with a community of tens of thousands of families.
So tell me a little bit more about this history game. I saw it came with cards, and does it actually have a board?
So each player shows up with their deck of cards. We've got starting decks to get people started, and that's the basic idea. But it is that collectible card game. It is that deck builder. You get to personalize your history. And so like my son started with scientists. My daughter started with the women of history, and they battle it out. And so the neat thing is every card gives you that little paragraph of history, but you build your deck out. And then because it's a game, it's been around for a while, we've got all the little add-ons. So you can have your own little play mat of the Siege of the Alamo, of World War II D-Day. And then we give you little sleeves too to protect the cards, or little miniatures of history and all the expansion packs that are time periods. So if you love the Roman Empire, if you wanted to learn about the colonial age, there's little booster packs, if you will, all about those moments of history for both the children and then the parents that want to teach that history too.
So depending on the card you have, there's different rankings and different attributes per the historical figure or event or whatever you've got on your card. Is that kind of how it goes?
Well, the nice thing is every card is dated. So you have a date. So like some younger kids will just lay their deck out and create their own personal timeline. And then they inquire with their parents or whoever, like, what does this mean? Or what's interesting? Because we put a paragraph on every card to give context. And then there's an ability that directly relates to why they're in history, whether it's an event, whether it's an artifact. And so even reading the ability and the name, they start to get these points in their mind of why history is exciting, why these people are so fun and interesting, and just the idea is to build the curiosity.
So every kind of aspect of the game is linked to actual history and things that happen and people that did it.
So yeah, you could have Abraham Lincoln leading Genghis Khan into Australia, defended by Churchill.
Okay, that's cool. So you mix and match. So it's a mashup too. It's all these different things happening at one time. Interesting. I've never tried it, but I'm gonna go look at it now that you're talking about it. That's interesting.
I know that that's not the only game that you offer. Some online options also?
And that's really, I think, the part that's fun is this company, the creator of this is one of these entrepreneurs that's always looking to fill the gaps, seeing where kids are looking for, where that need is. And so we try to digitalize Historical Conquest, but after having so many cards and every one of them unique, we burned out through a couple programmers. People, oh yeah, I can do that easy. But when you've got thousands of cards, it becomes just complicated. And so we simplified it. We put it onto a platform called Xogos. And then with that platform, we were able to create not just the one game of Historical Conquest, but we've got like speed typing games. So kids get to do racing while they're learning how to put their hands on a keyboard. We've got games about tower defense where it's all about your immune system. So now you're having to learn about what viruses and bacteria you're attacking with that are attacking your body, while actually, what protects it, what the things in your body that make it unique. So there's a lot of other educational games there that are built around the idea of modern games like a Fortnite or something like that, where it's these mini games, but yet we've got 20 plus games there, and each one is a unique educational experience.
And what age group are they geared towards?
Well, that's kind of the beauty of the platform is we've got things that are designed for addition. We're going over prime numbers. So you're talking like 7, 8 years old, basically up to the idea of high school. And so some of them can be learning about entrepreneurship, personal finance within that system. And as they're learning, they're actually earning coins in this system. So those coins can be turned into scholarship dollars that they could go to a trade school, or they could go to a 4-year college with and essentially pay for their education by playing board games, or in this case, digital games.
So you were talking a little bit about kind of the science or the chemistry behind all of this. So you've looked into the actual physical chemical reactions and how gaming is such a positive way to learn. Can you tell us a little bit about how you feel about that, or what you've discovered?
Absolutely, Chris. I love the idea of when we look at, how our left and right brains function at times, and just how we get some of that dopamine kick when all of a sudden we're having fun, we're interacting with somebody else, in a positive way. And I mean, you've certainly got advertising and marketing that figured it out and bombard us, but how do we take a step back from that? How do we control some of that with the intention of making sure we're reinforcing lessons, making sure we're reinforcing things that we want, those critical skills, that creativity to actually be nurtured. And that's where I think board games, both in a physical sense, do that when we're connected, playing games that help us like build that curiosity, that fun, that friendship. And yet digital can do that too. And how do we use those tools well? And that's that whole idea of gamification. How is it we're diving into that? How is it we're creating that? How do I win? Like, I've got a statement for my family that says, Dad always wins, because it doesn't matter. Like, I don't let my kids ever beat me, but sitting at that table with them, taking that time, setting aside for that 45 minutes to an hour, I've created a memory. I've created a bond for them that they know that if they won, they earned it. At the same time, some of them are cooperative based games, like things that we do together, and we won then together as a family too. And I love how there's all those different aspects of board gaming now, both, physically and digitally.
So you also have some things like the Kitchen Lab Academy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So Xogos platform isn't just about the game aspect, isn't just about trying to build. We also have a whole part about volunteerism. How is it you're making your communities better? And then we also have a whole school system built into that too. So in this case, we worked with like some cooks and some chefs to vet the idea of these lesson plans so kids can go in and learn the basics about yeast, learn the basics about cooking, like what's in their fridge, what does the food do to their body, and they work through these lessons then. And then at the same token, the parent account gets to see how they're doing. It gives them the grades, like as if they were actually going to class, but they're actually learning skills that will teach them throughout the rest of their life. Basic cooking skills, things they're going to need. And we've got also classes all about survival, how to build a fire, what that's like, to what is it like to look up at the stars and how do they map that out for, centuries. How do they navigate? How do they look to the constellations? And so we've got about 10 classes right now in our school system, and those are just a few of them that I've mentioned here.
Nice. So your gaming platform, how would you differentiate that from just another screen time, another game that you're just plugging the kids into to play? How's that different? How does it stand out?
Well, one thing I think that makes it different is you have this built by families, people that have kids and are trying to make sure they're teaching them. So the most important thing to us is our kids' safety. Who is it that they're playing with? How are they engaging? How are they connecting with them? And so in that sense, we make sure that any adult has a child that's in the count. Any teacher has students, and they can't be in the system without having their kids active, because this is for kids. It's built for them to basically learn as well as have fun. And so that idea that we have this idea that, yes, it's built on like a 70-30 principle, where the idea is like 70% of it's fun, but we want to make sure they're actually learning something they can take away with it. Whether that's the idea of like their immune system, as I talked about with tower defense, and all of a sudden now that's what they're talking about. Or our historical conquest, where they're talking about history. We want to make sure the dialogue they're taking away is also things that are relevant, things that, help them engage in the real world, rather than things that, aren't necessarily positive. Things that might be more culturally driven, rather than the idea of things that are more like life skills. And so that's the first thing we really do, is drive home that idea of safety. And so if they're looking to connect with another kid, another student, somebody in their co-op, both parents have to approve that chat ability first. So the only people you can usually talk with in the system first is the parents to the kids. Or if you open it up as a school, it's your school talking amongst themselves. And so we really want to make sure that the kids who are in this system have a safety net and are protected, because that is so important, I think, in a digital age where so many people get connected with strangers.
Yeah, 100% agree.
You also, in your bio, had mentioned about ECA scholarship. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is?
Absolutely. We at Historical Conquest, Xogos, have been a part of a number of different ESA programs. Those are ones that are state funded across several different states. And we have been certified, went through the hoops for a number of different states. Florida is one of those ones that is very unique, where they have a Step Up program, it's called. And we are certified through Step Up, so people can get our products through there, whether it's physical or digital, and get fully reimbursed. Unfortunately, they also have in Florida a marketplace, and we've had trouble getting into their marketplace for years, and they just logistically have some issues. And so our company also in turn built My Learning Resource. And that's a separate website that helps any vendor that is connected with that marketplace, or they're not. We help share those abilities so homeschool families can go, whether they're in Florida or somewhere else, to reach out and go, what is there that's in there? Do I have to go to a physical convention to find out, or is there a year-round option? And so that's the idea. We want to make sure to help connect people with the right resources for wherever they're looking, wherever they are on that journey, to, things that are either state funded or they're personally funding their education of their children themselves. We want to make it as easy as possible for a company to meet those needs.
The platform Xogos, where is it heading, and what do you think the future is for these kind of digital games in general?
Being a part of the company for the last 6 years, I saw it start 3 years ago, when it was just this idea of how do we digitalize our games. And so the idea of making the shift from, a whole platform built around the idea of multiple games, multiple creators. And then I love the idea of too, how much we're tapping into the idea of young entrepreneurship, how we're trying to inspire young adults, people on the age of 18, and telling them that they can build a successful business, and trying to help give them tools and networking to do that. And so for me, that's a big part of where I see Xogos going, is nurturing that community and going, what resources do you need to grow? Because so much of the young minds is that creativity. If we can nurture that as parents and just help grow, what is it that you see? Because they're not stuck oftentimes we are with the burdens of life and what it's like in some of those struggles. they're still just trying to have fun. They're trying to play. They're trying to be creative. And so we really want to step alongside and help people like that, those young families, those young entrepreneurs build out their business, whether it's an author or whether it's a 3D printer, whatever it is, to reach a network of people across the United States and try to be that connector. And so that's where I see Xogos going in a big part, because we've done, the teaching, we've done the lessons, we've done some of that other stuff. So that's really, I think, our next step is really helping that environment grow and be nurtured.
Interesting. Tell us about an experience where you see a kid really get into the game, or something that really made you feel, excited or fulfilled, that this is it. This is what I was after.
So when I'm at the conventions, as I've traveled here, I show up in a pineapple suit. And immediately, whether it's a young kid or whether it's a parent, it leaves an impression of fun. It leaves an impression of joy with somebody and curiosity at the same time. And so I love that idea, because all of those things are that positive emotions that we're always trying to reach people with, because I think to some degree there's not enough joy. And so that first day, as people are walking on these conventions and getting overwhelmed, stressed out because there's a million booths at all these things and workshops, and they go back to their hotel and they're exhausted. And all of a sudden that next morning they come back and say, my kid wouldn't leave me alone. What is it that you have? They want to know more about this. And that little 8-year-old, 10-year-old sits down with me at the game, and the parent walks away. I've never met this person before. I barely know them, but all of a sudden they're instantly safe. They feel it's okay. All of a sudden their kid's there for an hour, and they're like, why are they still here? What is it that you have that is so engaging? That's so fun. And I love that idea. And especially with having like my son or daughter there, they now built a connection with somebody else outside of Minnesota, where I'm at. I born and raised in Minnesota, lived here my entire life. I've moved around a couple different places, and I love this state, but I love the United States. I love how different it is. I grew up traveling from coast to coast with my father. So I love being able to bring that to my children, and that ability to travel, see the United States, and make connections with other people around the world. And just what that brings to realize the world is sometimes a lot bigger than our small communities, and how there's good people all over the place. And I really appreciate that idea and those values.
Yeah, without a doubt, games bring people together, right? You're locked in with whomever you're playing with for the time that you're there. And that really is that's an engaging factor to me, right? For a game, that's a huge part of it. And a lot of times you don't care who wins or loses or what happened. You just had a good time.
One of my favorite people once said, it's never about the idea of what you can teach somebody, but how they walk away with how they made you feel.
Yeah.
And so how you play a game, how you're engaging in that, there's so much feeling attached to, how is it that we're playing within the rules? How much are we, being coy, making those side comments, engaging, and just having fun with those moments. It brings people back to the table at times. And that's why I love games so much, both in that physical sense and to some degree the digital. But just sitting face to face with somebody, reading their micro expressions, reading those little quirks that, come out as they, begin to crack a little bit over time.
Is there a story behind your hat? So your email is History Hat Guy. So tell us, and a lot of your pictures have you in your hat. So tell us about, is there a story behind that, or you just like to wear funny hats?
Oh, I've got stories about everything. I love the idea of purpose and being intentional. From, simple rings to shirts and everything like that. And I learned that very early on with, as I mentioned earlier in this, I grew up playing chess, a simple board game that been around, for centuries. But for me, I grew up watching and learning Bobby Fischer, one of the great chess players of all time.
Right.
But I would read his stories as I read some of his things when he went to tournaments. And as he was getting good, he wasn't just a good player. He got in people's heads. He got into their minds. He would show up to a match and hadn't showered for a week. He would show up, in this idea of intimidating some of these world champions without ever making a move. He would play the mental game beyond the board. And so for me, when I grew up in that idea, I grew up, like many of us did, in a culture in a public school with being bullied. And that idea of what they could say could hurt you, and this idea, and I realized joy was something to turn that around with. And I realized the psychology of that, of just if I can get them to laugh with me, and so what if it's a little part against me, that's okay. And I built up this idea. And so for me, I started wearing hats. I started wearing them in high school, and they were a little off, a little goofy at times. I can still remember going to chess nationals, and you've got all of these wonderful nerds spread across the tables, but you could find me in the photograph because I've got a flower pot on my head, but it's just that idea of that, just that simple joy to bring to people at that time. And so that's a big part of this company, and that idea of just bringing history, making it exciting, that idea of where that simple hat can engage in a conversation, in a piece. And then I'm a man. And so that's the idea of that email, history, hat man, 3 simple ideas, 3 simple principles that are very clear.
I'm just curious because you went so far with chess. You were a trainer in chess.
And so, yes, I was a chess coach. I got out of my chess club after being MVP for a number of years, working with my chess coach, actually competing with him a couple different times. And then he invited me back to, he was the high school coach. The junior high coach literally changed my life when I walked into the wood shop and, we're laying out chessboards and being able to engage in people right away. It was one of those things I realized I could do. One of those things that I could teach those same lessons, bring it for about 5 years out of high school, taught elementary kids, taught them the basics of chess, some of the principles behind it, and some of the meaning behind just the simplicity of, where, yes, your king is important, and you've got all these little different unique pieces from the pawns and the bishops, and to some degree how life can be layered in a simple chessboard. And, it wasn't just then about the game. It was about the other things they learned, engaged, the competitiveness. And yes, it was a one-on-one match, but you had a team of people too. You had chess teams and you would compete against the other schools. I was unique in the sense that I walked in a lot of different worlds. For me, I was the only person of my class in Lakeville, Minnesota to have graduated. And I haven't met many others that lettered every year in chess club, and they called it a sport, which I loved, but also football.
I think that says a lot about a person, right? You're very diverse. You could do 2 different sports, very different sports, and earn a letter. That's great.
I also like the theme behind a lot of the things you're saying is that we're working on making good citizens, good people, making good choices. And I think that's a really important thing that we miss a lot. Sometimes in the education process, we're so focused on learning a particular subject that sometimes gets missed. And I think it's really important.
I couldn't agree with you more. Just that idea that, what is our real purpose? Is it memorizing? Is it getting all these dates? Is it passing that next test? Or is it really about cultivating that idea of a good citizen, somebody that's going to be impactful? That can be simple impact of, having that little, lemonade stand my kids do and just smiling and bringing these moments of joy, or, they become an astronaut, everything can have purpose. And I love that idea of just being able to pause. And I've learned so much of that more now too, as my family has grown. And I've got a son now who's very much on the spectrum, having to navigate big emotions, we like to call them, and how much that can slow you down. And you have to have the patience for those moments to just go, okay, whatever we were doing, we're going to pause. We're going to sit in this space and just see where you're at now, continually learning, continually growing, and just that energy and attitude that has when you're looking for that idea of like, I'm just trying to make the world better today than it was yesterday.
We get so wrapped up on the end result of, being taught something that you forget the lessons you learn along the way, the journey, right? And a lot of times it's about that. How, not so much what you learn, but how did you learn it and how can you repeat that in life? And it's important. And I think you've got a real interesting approach to working with students on that. That's really cool.
Well, and I appreciate that. One of my favorite people I've listened to and learned from is Jim Quick, brain scientist that talks a lot about the idea that anytime you learn something, you should learn it to teach. And so that's also what I've tried to instill into my kids. If you're learning this, how are you going to teach this? Whether it's a stranger or my 15-year-old son, how are you teaching your 8-year-old sister? You know, my daughter's learning sign language right now, and yet she's 17 and teaching her 8-year-old sister. And so she's learning it to teach. And I love that idea because you learn it differently when it's, I'm learning this to teach somebody else because I want to. I'm engaged in what this is.
That's a classic trick, right? When you teach somebody something that you're learning, you learn it better. That's often the case. Tens of thousands of people in a nationwide game now. So how does that work when you host tournaments, whether they're virtual or in person? Is it you get a lot of fanfare and a lot of people interested in doing that kind of stuff?
As far as the history of Historical Conquest goes, it started with Zach almost 20 years ago when he was graduating college, and they told him to create something of value. And he came up with this idea of a collectible card game to teach history. And he passed the class with it, a couple simple card decks, and then in turn brought it home and like, oh, this is something maybe that, you know, I could take or produce. And his wife looked at him and said, well, that's a dumb idea. And he took her honest opinion, threw it in a closet, and it sat there. And it didn't go anywhere for years until his kids in a youth group were asking him if he had anything that would be different or fun. And he brought it out and he showed it to them. And they're like, this is really interesting. This is really fun. And that motivated him to start producing it. And so it started in Alaska, you know, this simple idea. From there, what was neat was he ended up moving to the continental United States. He started going to homeschool conferences. And so as he traveled, he got other families, other people connecting this game. And that's where he realized he had to do this reprint. And that's where I discovered it on Kickstarter. And it was kind of fun. Our story started with, I love games. I love the idea of just diving in deep, finding the ways to break them, finding the little things with the rules that are a little off. And that was the same thing with this game. As I started emailing what I thought was just customer support of like, hey, I've got a question here about this deck, and I got the creator. And that's what's so neat is this is a very small company. And so I'm talking with him, and he looks at me and goes, so where are you in the United States? Are you east of the Mississippi or are you west of the Mississippi? Because in his mind and traveling, the United States was divided by the Mississippi. For me, being born up in Ely, Minnesota, one of the coolest small towns in America, as we were nominated for at times, that is north. It is north of the source. And so it kind of had him scratching his head going, wait, what? You know, and connecting with Zach, I got to then start traveling and meeting some of these families as he went to anywhere from 10 to 20 conventions a year around the United States. And just as he built out this network of people that would get in the game, would raise their kids on the game, because you can start playing it when, you know, 6, 7, 8 years old, just basic learning how to read skills. You can have fun with the game. And that's what I like about it. Me and my son usually play a game in about 15, 20 minutes now, but we've got decks that are scaled for speed. We know our cards well at this point, and it's a lot of fun. But I travel and people begin to look for me. They look for my kids to play, to compete, and they always want to play the creator of the game. And so that's where every Friday we do virtual tournaments. And so you get kids that log in, and a lot of them are in the United States, but some of homeschoolers have traveled these conventions. So we have, yes, people from outside the United States now that have brought the game with them and will log in. So literally it is a worldwide tournament now, which I love. And unfortunately, at one point, they were planning to have a physical tournament to get all the players together in one place. The World War Museum in Kansas City, we lined everything up. People were ready to go, and it was March of 2020. So needless to say, that tournament did not happen, but we are certainly still have that in our plans, and certainly at some point down the road here, hopefully we will get an actual nationwide tournament. But, you know, you set plans in place, and you can certainly hope they go one way, and then, you know, you have to shift and adjust.
Tell us more about the other games that you do online.
Absolutely. So as far as the Xogos platform goes, I love how it is built right now with the idea of the fans in mind. And so we've got a lot of games in there that are still in like their beta form. And so you get a vote. You get to give us feedback. You get to ask, what is it that I want. And being we are this small company, we are looking for that feedback. We are looking for that engagement. One of the games we have in there is the Shakespeare Conspiracy, where it's like this party game where you're taking on the roles of a Shakespeare play. So it's similar to like a game of Clue almost, and that whodunit sort of thing. Okay. And so we've had a lot of fun with that game in my family. The other one that I've really enjoyed being able to play was one where it's like built like, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? And it's this idea of trying to find this criminal who has stolen this item. And you've got, if you want a world map, if you want a United States map, you pick like what secret agent that you are working for. Are you working for the United States? Are you working for Great Britain? And so you've got all these secret agencies that are trying to hunt this bad guy down while going through this trivia, basically this geography type game where it walks through the pieces of the world as this criminal bounces around, and you have to find the clues, find the hints, and solve them and try to catch them. At some point, that can be a team game too. So you can log in there together and you work as a team, as an agency too. So that's meant to be kind of a party game too, which is nice. We've got the idea of a Team Edison versus Team Tesla game, where it's a simple trivia game based around historical facts. And so that's another one that's kind of fun, and just it's broken down into grade levels too. So are you looking at educational things based, in world history, American history? Are you looking at elementary, junior high, or high school levels? We try to make sure we layer everything in the system. So it just, wherever you're at, there's something there. And that's what I love about the homeschooling culture too, is sometimes those grades don't match up. Sometimes the kids get so excited, they just want to dive deep and learn way more facts and interest than, where their grade level is. And that's what I love. Our system engages that way. And so we even have like an exploratory library where they get to ask questions of a George Washington, of a Thomas Edison, and they will respond to them. We've got their, animated face. They get to engage with them with these simple questions that they're asking about it too. And so that's one of the other things we have built into our system too. And that's where it's just neat. All these little pieces, we keep going, man, what do we need now? What can we add in? What are people looking for? Because the technology is just moving so fast. And, we want to be on the cutting edge of it as a company, just because we're connected. We're seeing what is out there, going to so many conventions and just trying to go, man, that's a really great idea. How do we connect that in? I'm trying to always reinvent everything, but just use what other people have and help elevate them and us at the same time.
For folks listening, the platform's Xogos. How do they get out there? Do they just look up Xogos on Google?
You can look at xogosgaming.com, Xogos with an X. I don't remember the exact language that comes from. I believe it's somewhere in Africa, where the idea of that means gaming in that language, but somebody could probably correct me on that, or even the creator if he gets the chance to look at that. But yeah, Xogos Gaming, we've got our about idea there. You can log in, create an account. You can try it out for a month. We have yearly options built in there as well, or we've got stuff set up for schools. We're really just trying to connect the best way we can so people have fun and learn a little bit at the same time. Historical Conquest. Same idea, historicalconquest.com. But the one thing I would encourage people, if you get the chance, you're looking at stuff there to buy, just as I get a chance to travel and engage them, I am the Hat Man. You use that at checkout, you get a little bit of a discount, which is kind of nice. You can use that as a coupon code when you're purchasing items. And, being the guy, I get a little bit of credit for that. So there's the honesty and truth to that, but it can always get added in, which is really kind of nice.
I was very impressed by what I saw at your booth and the games and all the things, the opportunities that schools and students and teachers could use to supplement and to still educate.
Well, and that's what I love. It's you have Historical Conquest as a great supplement if they want to use it that way. Card game. I've heard about public school teachers who will just pass out the cards, or we're teaching this and it's this little fact. I love how it's that simple token they can take, they can collect, but yet the company has grown with the adventure boxes that are part of that, where now we give a craft, an activity, and a small textbook they can either use for K through 12, or they can use it for living history. And I love how then, Xogos Gaming is this platform where that's all digital, but yet encourages that off screen. And then, you've got My Learning Resource, which tries to connect our companies as well as any company that's out there and wants to just help be a resource to a homeschooler. We want to just keep using this network ability of where the digital world has taken us.
Well, Joshua, final thoughts. What would you like the listeners to hear and remember you by at the end here?
I really hope that I get to see you soon and you have a chance to laugh and have some fun today.
Excellent. I hope everybody listening has some fun today. That's all the time we have for this podcast.
So be sure to watch again another episode of Modern Farming Podcast, where Chris and Tara and together we're growing knowledge about the world that feeds us.